So for 2 years I tried to make my toy soldiers a commercial success, and it wasn't easy. I mean, the thing is, I never really designed them as they were toys, but it was also this kind of weird self-portrait that I was making. They weren't a marketed product in that sense that I didn't analyse the market and see a gap in the market and produce something to fill that gap. I just made beautiful toy soldiers. That's what I did. Now, 2 years after trying to commercialise them, they sold in museums and they still sell across the world. I generally sell to adults. It's very difficult to reach children. And that's what toy manufacturers have found ever since Star Wars. Because Star Wars was a kind of crossover movie. You know, before that you had the Vietnam War, you had cowboys and Indians. And so history was becoming quite a complicated narrative to make toys about. The Second World War was kind of easy. There was good guys and bad guys. The Vietnam War came along in the 60s, 70s, and it became more difficult. And just about that time you had Star Wars. So we didn't have to deal with revisionist westerns and the complexity of Indian massacres and things like that. We could deal with we could still have gunfights and sword play and dogfights, but we'd have them in a kind of mystical space in a fantasy world. Star Wars came in, and I was born in 72, 77. I was 5 when Star Wars first came out, and I was of course, like everyone of my generation, especially those who were interested in toy soldiers and little models of things. You know, I was really taken by Star Wars because it's awesome, isn't it? And what a wonderful. Well, of course, I was still attracted because I was kind of born into toy soldiers, and toy soldiers was still held an immense romance for me. And in fact, my nephew had that, which is when I came back, when I started making these soldiers. It was a kind of a piece of communication between him and I. I was living away. I've always lived apart from my family since I was 18. So when I had nephews and nieces, I'd like to to send them meaningful pictures, or rather than just anyway. So, but it becomes quite difficult when you realise that most toys. Let me tell you a story about. There's a book called The Real Toy Story by a Guardian journalist, and he wrote the story of how Transformers were first released in the United States. Now, Transformers are this kind of wonderful toy we all know now, but when they were first released, they were a Japanese toy, and some American toy executives went over to Japan, saw them, and just went, "Wow, these are awesome! Let's get them to the USA, and we'll make a fortune. We'll sell them everywhere." So they bought loads and loads of them, ready for Christmas. They started to promote them, and they sold almost none. And they were like, "What are we going to do?" Now, at the time, it was illegal for toy manufacturers to use animation to sell toys. It was kind of something to do with Disney, I think, some kind of copyright laws, or they thought it was too much magic. It was too powerful a magic to use animation to sell toys. So there's these toy executives with thousands of, millions of Transformers, and they know kids are going to love them. But how do they make the kids love them? And they can't use animation, which is what you need to do to kind of have your Transformers to give them a kind of reality. You need animation. So what they decided to do is they looked at Star Wars and saw the success Star Wars were having, and said, well, instead of trying to do a little 30-second commercial in between the 20 minutes of cartoon content, why don't we just make content? And so they made the Transformers cartoon, which I saw when I was 10 or 11 and thought it was awesome. It was a whole new type of cartoon with these new type of laser guns and stuff. And they had great success with that. And after that you have He-Man, and you have all of those different plastic toys that come from movies and TV. Of course, I'm now back at history, the copyright narrative, the copyright-free narrative that belongs to us all. You know, if you want to make an X-Wing fighter, you have to ask George Lucas for permission. If you want to make a Fusilier or a Hussar, 10th Hussars, this is historical document that you can make your own, and you don't have to kind of pay homage to the mighty myth controllers and the lawyers who control the mythologies. So with my toy soldier army, I went to war. You can continue. So in exchange for having Martin behind the camera, I became Christopher Worker for him and did some work at his house. That's nice. But if he continues to cut me off, I'm going to plaster over his blinking with this. So when I started my surreal war with the Megatoy Corps, there were 3 big companies. There was Disney Pixar, there was Marvel, the superheroes, and there was LucasArts. Now, in the first 5 years of my war, Disney bought the rights to Disney Pixar. They had Disney Pixar already. Disney bought the rights to Marvel, all the superheroes, to make all the toys for the superheroes, and they also bought the rights of LucasArts. And so now Disney control all of the Star Wars toys and the Marvel superhero toys and their own Disney Pixar toys. So they control all of the mythologies that our children inhabit when they play with the toys. I mean, of course, the kids then make their own stories up, but at the base, these are privatised stories, if you like, privatised mythologies, which means a person like me can't go and make toys for kids using these stories. So I'm kind of excluded from that. So with my toy soldiers, we fight to set imagination free. Of course, Martin's random cuts do enable one thing: we get to reshoot in a nicer place, because history is the copyright-free narrative that belongs to us all, and we, the soldiers of Walkerloo, are fighting to set imagination free! 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 I remember when I got the loan agreed with the bank manager, and the bank manager, we just signed the cheque, and he kind of went to shake my hand, and I said to him in my broken French, I said, you know, whenever I got money as a kid, from my grandmother, from my mother, I would put it in my pocket, and I would race out to the shop and buy some toy soldiers. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with this cheque. I'm going to race out and buy some toy soldiers, more than I've ever bought before. Ba-bum. This is my serpent of magical toy soldiers, which is coming out of the wall, and then going along, and back into the wall, and it comes back out of the wall, and goes back into the wall, and goes right around the gallery, in fact. I've kind of got about 600,000 toy soldiers around Russia. That's about obviously the same as Napoleon took into, thereabouts, Napoleon took into Russia back in 1812. However, right at the moment, there's a little protest going on with my toy soldiers. You'll see they've got these little luminous pseudo-woolly balaclavas on. And that's kind of I was doing some research on Cossacks. And I found these videos online, research to do Cossacks, to do a regiment of Cossacks in the same way I've done the rest of my toy soldiers. And I found this video of a bunch of young girls with guitars, Pussy Riot in fact, being beaten by these guys in Cossack costumes. So, I don't know, my sympathies always lie with young girls with guitars rather than blokes with big sticks hitting them. So I'm for Pussy Riot. I'm just on the all of my toy soldiers are now veterans. 10 years have been my toy soldiers. For the last 8 years they've been at war with the Mega Toy Corps, which I've already discussed. However, now I'm quitting the field of toy soldiers. I mean, I've never really made films and made publicity directly towards children. It's always adults who've bought my toy soldiers for kids. Now, so there's nothing really changing in that, other than I'm putting more of myself into the project. More of my Mythself is my kind of meta title, yeah? So this is Christopher Walkerloo, who makes these toy soldiers. There's always Christopher War and Peace, who was the guy who made the toy soldiers that went to Russia. There's also Christopher Wanker, who made the Easter eggs. There's Christopher Worker, who paints people's houses. There's Christopher Winker, who does kind of funny cartoons. There's Christopher Wanker, and that's who we're going to get onto now. Now, if we follow the serpent, I'll introduce you to the new Commander-in-Chief of the Arm of Walkerloo. And he couldn't quite make it in the gallery. He never quite makes it in galleries. Maybe one day, who knows? He's in the shed next door, the annex. So maybe we'll go check him out. This way! Charge! So this is my the annex to the gallery. It's not really part of the house gallery. It's kind of the shed, and that's the kind of place that a figure like Christopher Wanker can be. So this is Christopher Wanker here. This picture in itself is called The Tale of Christopher Wanker, and it's a picture which is a bit my life story up to the date when Christopher Wanker takes control of the army of Walkerloo. I'll tell you the story of how it came about. So I was a little boy playing with Star Wars and toy soldiers here. Always and then in the northeast of England, and I made toy aeroplanes, and a ball came along, and a narrative that took away my troops. Anyway, so then I went to Oxford and studied architecture and met with the children of power and all kinds of different people that you meet in a place like Oxford, which trains up the princes of the world, let's say, those in power. Left Oxford with a degree in architecture, and there wasn't much work at the time, so I started hitching about the country. Now, on one of those hitch voyages, I was in the back of a car, because the two guys in front who gave me a ride were talking amongst themselves, so I was kind of free to look around. and I happened to notice a truck overtook us, and it was a hula hoop truck, hula hoop crisps. The next truck had nothing on the side, and then I started looking around, and I saw trucks with nothing on the side all over the place. And that was where I had the idea here, which is SMACM, Strategic Mobile Advertising Campaign Media, in which I identified all of these working haulage vehicles as potential advertising hoardings. And so what I did is I went to the library and started writing a business plan to collect this space together and resell it. So I could work visually, understand where the roads and where the different trucking companies were based. What I did is I bought 2 road atlases, cut them out, and stuck this map of Britain right round the bedroom, my little bedroom in London. So I had this huge map kind of enveloping the inside of my room. I bought a suit, I got shiny shoes, I went to have a meeting with the bank manager with this business plan that I'd written. Unfortunately, when I got to the bank said, Mr. Walker, you've got no money behind you. It's a good idea, but it's just a good idea. And they refused to lend me the money that I thought might enable me to realise this project, SMACM. So I kind of failed to be a real businessman, but there was something of a kind of fantastic businessman came about. I threw off this suit and started painting and decorating. Now, when I paint and decorate, I'm always working with a fictional narrative. So this is a picture of me pretending to be, thinking I'm a kind of Spartan hoplite, holding the hot gates, holding the Persian Empire from invasion the West, when in fact I'm just painting houses white. Anyway, I go back to my bedroom one night, a bit drunk, and I'm sitting in my bedroom. I'm kind of a bit depressed because my business isn't working out. I'm not really a businessman. I don't really want to be a businessman, in all truth. I really like making pictures. I've got this map of the kind of UK wrapped right around my bedroom, and I'm kind of staring up, and then I see it. I identify London's cock, which is the M25 and the M1 and the A1M, and that makes this big penis on the map of Britain. Now, I haven't done anything. All this is a regular map stuck to a board, and then I've painted on top. So I've painted around this object here, which I identify as London's cock. This guy here, London's cock being his cock, is Christopher Wanker, the fantasy banker. Is that where Cockneys are from? Because of London's cock, maybe. West End, East End, Bell End, who knows? Of course, right here at the time was when John Major was Prime Minister, and his constituency is right here, the Jap side of this London's cock. Anyway, this is my fantastical tool for cultural propagation, and this is the personage who can manipulate this tool into being. And now he's going to manipulate all of my toy soldiers, because he's joining the war with the corporate beasts. The first corporate beast I'm about to take on is Disney, because they are the immediate adversary of my toy soldier army. So I have hundreds of thousands of toy soldiers in the world, and they're fighting to set imagination free. Because at the moment, most of the toys that our kids buy or little boys buy are based on Marvel, a Disney intellectual property. They're based on LucasArts, now also a Disney intellectual property. And of course all of the Disney Pixar stuff are all Disney intellectual properties. But my toy soldiers are historic toy soldiers. And history belongs to everybody. So that's nice. There's a story that belongs to everybody and isn't controlled by these monstrous objects like Disney. I don't know whether the monsters are bad or they're good. It's the fact that they're kind of immoral beings. And also their businesses. Now the thing about a business is it's if a business succeeds, it's in profit. If it fails, it's in deficit. It's losing money. Now Walkerloo, when I first launched it, I wasn't making any money, so it was kind of it became difficult for me to justify it to myself as a business. But when I turned it into a surreal war against the Megatoy Corps, well, it's measured in a different way, isn't it? Because it's no longer a business, and I'm not really a businessman. I'm a bloke who makes pictures, and these are my pictures in the world, and I want to release them into the world and have the world play with my pictures, because that's what because I think they express something of the world, and yeah. Along, and a narrative that took away my troops.